Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Calls. This is the 2024 Memorial Initial Research Show. Hope you had a fantastic RBC Canadian Open. What a win, a memorable win this week at Hamilton as Robert McIntyre, Bobby Mack, wins in dramatic fashion with his father on the bag. We saw quite a bit of interesting caddy stuff this week, especially Sunday. Fluff. CT Pan's caddy falling, so hopefully he is well. We had a random fan caddy. It was a crazy mess up at the RBC Canadian. But again, congratulations to Bobby Mack, and congratulations to you if you had Bobby Mack. So let me know in chat or in the comments if you had the win ticket on Bobby Mack. I was nowhere near him. He was near the bottom of my rankings. My week overall was fairly mediocre, slightly on the negative side. I did take down Stewie's contest, so that definitely boosts the confidence a little bit. I had some good suggestions for you all, and I had some really bad suggestions for you all, so hopefully you all followed me on the Tom Kim, on the Keith Mitchell, played plenty of Rory, and you stayed away from the Martin Laird. You used Maverick McNeely, who I was nowhere near, and Sam Burns, and who I faded. So hopefully your RBC Canadian Open was a success, and we move to a very prestigious 3-week portion of the PGA tournament schedule, as we start off with a big time event, a signature event with the Memorial at Jack's Place, Muirfield. And then next week will be the U.S. Open, and then the Travelers after that. So we have 3 very, very exciting weeks coming up on the PGA Tour, starting with the Memorial. So let's get into it. All statistics provided tonight and every night are from FantasyNational.com. It is the best golf analytics tool out there for your money. If you are a member at Fantasy National, you're not going to have to listen to me give you some decent suggestions and a lot of bad ones. You're going to have the power at your fingertips to know who to play and who to stay away from every week on the PGA Tour. So go check out FantasyNational.com. You will not regret it. In the description of the video, there are links to all of the social media. First off, my X and Instagram, where every week I post research on the PGA Tour. That resumes tomorrow, since Memorial and Muirfield has been seen consistently since 1974. It is a very, very prestigious tournament, so plenty of historical data to look at this week, and I will have the pattern of winners, some course information, and the players who fit the pattern of previous winners tomorrow over on social media. So give me a follow at your preferred social media site if you want to see the research that I do every week on the PGA Tour. X is also where I place my weekly betting cards and my top player usage in the DFS contests I play. You would have known that I had a decent little sweat going with Tom Kim, considering his weekend charge that he made on Saturday and today. You would see how much Corey Connors I had, how much Tom Kim I played, Keith Mitchell, also how much Sahith Theegala I played. So all the good and all the bad. So if you want to see those pieces of information, the betting card and my top player usage, then give me a follow over at X as well. Lastly, for social media, Gabe's handle is in the description. He writes a very good article called The Fringe. It's a great way to start your week of preparation. He sends that out every Sunday, and then he continues to update you with his own version of recent form and course history. And if you are a subscriber to his article, which is free to do, you're going to be able to join us in his Substack chat every Wednesday as we continue the DFS talk over there after calls. Talk about game theory, our favorite areas of price board. It was a very fun and interesting chat last Wednesday, as him and I were completely different, seemingly, on our key players. So if you want to be able to join us, give your input, and receive all of the good suggestions that go on in that chat, then make sure you are subscribed to his article and go show him some support and follow him over on social media. Lastly, we're live. Chat is open. In addition to hearing how your RBC Canadian went, hopefully it was a success. Who do you think is the early favorite this week at the Memorial? What do you think plays well here? All of that good stuff. So let's do our initial research for the 2024 Memorial. And we start as we always do on a Sunday evening over at the GCSAA tournament fact sheet. Pardon me as I get a few things together. There have been a few field changes, mostly due to the Aeon Swing 5 and there's a sponsors invite and whatnot. We'll cover that when we move to Fantasy National. But Muirfield Village in Dublin, Ohio, just outside of Columbus, Ohio, has been the host of the Memorial now for decades. This is Jack's place. This is Jack's baby. He has a few designs on the PGA Tour, but this is his most famous design, his most well-known course, maybe in the world, maybe. So we are going to be able to look at some architect information in Fantasy National. Not a whole lot of data there. He does have one of the courses in the Rota at the American Express, even though the stadium course out there is a Pete Dye design. He does have the Nicklaus Tournament course, which they use in that Rota. PGA National, the host of the Cognizant Classic earlier this year, is also a Jack Nicklaus design. He has his hands on a couple of courses on the PGA Tour, but this is what he is most known for. So we might take a look at some Jack Nicklaus design information or data there. Muirfield is constantly tinkered with. It has seen significant changes over the years. It's very rare that Jack does not change a few things year over year to stay up to date with equipment and how the state of the game is. The most recent significant renovation was in 2020. Muirfield is a par 72, our full allotment of 4 par 3s and 4 par 5s, measuring well over 7,500 yards. A very, very long course, and as we'll see, a very, very difficult course. One of the most difficult on the PGA Tour, one of the longest on the PGA Tour. So right away, 2 more filters that will be keyed in on this week as we go through the data. The greens at Muirfield are very small, average 5,000 square feet, and they will play even smaller than that due to their firmness, the speed of the greens, which the stimp is not listed, but I will tell you it is very rarely anything other than lightning. Sometimes it is fast if they have some rain throughout the week, but very rarely is it not lightning. And these greens will play pretty darn small. 24 acres of fairway, some of the smallest fairways here. It is wider the further away from the hole you are, meaning the more you push towards the green, more you use your 3-wood, your driver, the narrower the fairways are here. So we will see that there is quite a bit of a premium on accuracy here, continuing the theme from the Colonial, from the RBC Canadian. Quite a few bunkers, but 13 holes with water in play. Just adding to the difficulty that Muirfield presents. We are on bent grass. It does not give the specific subtype, but these have consistently been bent grass over the years. The fairways are bent as well, which is a little bit unusual, but fairways are bent. And in the rough, a mix of Kentucky bluegrass, rye, fescue, but you see the length here, 4 inches in length, very long, very difficult to play out of. Again, adding emphasis to the accuracy. The most notable change to Muirfield from last year is that the 16th tee was moved significantly to the right and a bunker was removed. As I mentioned, Jack constantly tinkers with Muirfield Village. No significant changes in terms of length really this year to the course. And if we take a look at a few specifics around Muirfield, you see by yardage, raw total yardage, it is the 5th longest course played so far. Basically right on par with Quail Hollow, and we know how long Quail Hollow and how difficult it is. These are the tied for 3rd smallest greens, along with Colonial, Valhalla, PGA West. Several courses average about 5,000 square feet. It's very rare that you get anything like Pebble or Harbor Town, but very, very small greens here at the Memorial. And of course, we're on Bent. So there's a look at the GCSA tournament fact sheet for the Memorial and Muirfield Village this week. With that, we'll move to Fantasy National, and as I mentioned, there have been 3 quote-unquote field changes, at least in terms of Fantasy National. They originally loaded the data, late Friday night into Saturday, so these 3 players have not qualified due to changes in the Aon Swing 5. So Pearson Coody, Mac Meisner, and Davis Thompson are not in. They have been replaced by Ben Griffin, Bobby Mack, obviously coming off of his win, and Victor Paris coming off his solo 3rd at the RBC Canadian. So those players have not been loaded into Fantasy National yet. They will be tomorrow. I'm giving you this information as the viewer. So any player with a star not playing, and then those 3 players have indeed qualified due to their performance in the Aon Swing 5. Ben Griffin, Robert McIntyre, Victor Paris. Also, 2 other players to make a note of. Jackson Koivun, I believe is how you say that. I could be wrong. He is the Jack Nicklaus Award winner. So the Jack Nicklaus Award winner always receives an invitation to play in the Memorial. And then Alex Noren has received a sponsor's invite. So the field stands at 73 this week. This is a player-hosted signature event, which means we do have a cut. It is the traditional Masters cut, top 50 and ties, and anyone within 10 shots of the lead after play concludes on Friday or the 2nd round. So a very, very small cut this week. Be aware of that. Even though this is a signature event, we do have a cut. All right, so very quickly, let's take a look at a couple of big picture views here, a couple of overarching filters that we can look at. First is Jack Nicklaus. This is the prototypical Jack Nicklaus design. So in the past 2 years, and again, there's not a lot of data here. Shane Lowry with 17 rounds. You've got the PGA Championship this year. Valhalla is a Jack Nicklaus design. The American Express, the 1 round that players play on the Nicklaus Tournament course. Of course, the Memorial and the Cognizant Classic or Honda, if we're looking historically. So those are the 4 courses that would make up this subset of data that we're looking at. In the past 2 years, on Jack Nicklaus designs, our top performers in the field this week, at least in Fantasy National, remember we don't have 3 players, Scotty Scheffler, Xander, Victor Hovland, Eric Cole, Shane Lowry, Rory, Lee Hodges, Siwoo Kim, Justin Rose, and Max Homa. Something else that we're definitely going to look at is long courses. This is well over 7,400 yards, well over 7,500 yards, one of the longest courses on tour. So in the past 2 years, on long courses, our top performers have been Xander, Scotty Scheffler, Rory, Max Homa, Sung Jae, Akshay Bhatia, Wyndham Clark, Sahith Theegala, Ben On, and Victor Hovland. Of course, Victor Hovland is our defending champion, defeating Denny McCarthy in a playoff last year. I can tell you now, we're definitely going to be looking at the difficult relative to par filter, so I will go ahead and check that. But before we investigate that, let's explain why Muirfield is so tough. So let's go to the Fantasy National course breakdown, and we look at the scorecard here. First thing I like to do is look for the 9th and 10th most difficult holes. Fortunately for us, they're right next to each other. You see they both play to about a 1/10 of a shot over par. In fact, you have to get to the 13th and 14th 14th and 15th most difficult holes before you get to where par would fall. That signifies a very difficult course when you only have 4 holes that play under par, and they are the par 5s. Par 5 15th, quarter of a shot under par. The par 5 11th, a 1/10 of a shot under par. Par 5 7th, a little bit more than a quarter. Par 5 5th, 3/10. Those are the only 4 holes at Muirfield that play under par. Everything else is difficult. Pars are good scores around Jack's Place. We look at the other end of the spectrum. We have this very, very tough finishing stretch. The par 4 18th, quarter of a shot. 2/10, 2/10, 2/10, 2/10 of a shot over par. Bogeys and double bogeys galore around Jack's Place with the water, with the deep rough. Just very, very difficult around here. The length of the course comes into the par 3s. We have 210, 200, 180, fairly short, at least by PGA Tour standards, or maybe average length, and then 220. So 3 of the 4 par 3s measure over 200. All 4 of them measure over 180 yards. And they are very, very challenging as well. You see, right here. Second toughest hole, 5th toughest hole, 10th toughest, 6th toughest. So very, very challenging par 3s here at Muirfield. As we look at some data around performance at Muirfield, strokes gained by shot type for our top 10s, you see approach very heavy. You would expect that from a Jack Nicklaus design. He tests all aspects of your game, but really wants to emphasize your approach play, much like Pete Dye in that regard. Putting, but the around the green is heavily outweighing the off the tee. So do take a note of that as we rise on the leaderboard here and look at these strokes gained by shot type. Top 5s, off the tee might try to catch up a little bit, but it's still about a 10th behind in terms of the around the green, but the approach really takes off. And then for our winners, the off the tee does end up mattering a little bit more so than the around the green, and then the approach still outweighing the putting. A lot of this is attributable to the fact that there are a few forced layups around Jack's Place. There are some forced carries at Jack's Place. So you think about some of the winners, especially recently. Our defending champion, Victor Hovland, has plenty of distance. Patrick Cantley is a 2-time winner here. He's got plenty of distance. Bryson has won here. Plenty of distance. So there is some to be gained with off the tee. And if you are players like Rory, like Bryson, who are generally pretty darn accurate with their length, they're going to gain a pretty significant advantage. We move to strokes gained by hole by par. Again, with 4 par 5s, and they all play under par. Players know they have to take advantage of the par 5s, so no surprise to see them lead the way in terms of strokes gained. We move to top 5s. Much kind of the same distribution here. Par 4s and par 3s pretty much equal. Par 5s significantly ahead. And then for the winners, the par 4s actually catch the par 5s. So almost every player will take advantage of the par 5s throughout the week at Muirfield. But what separates the winners is their performance on these par 4s, particularly the tough par 4s. Move to hole composition. Talks a little bit about these par 3s. One from 175 to 200, measuring at 180. 3 of the 4 coming from 200 to 225. One is right on the border there at 200 yards, so you can see it coming into this range bucket, on a day or two if they move pin locations and tees and whatnot. But 3 fairly long par 3s and then 1 average or medium length. We do have 2 short par 4s. I don't think they are drivable though. We do have the par 4 14th at 360. You see the eagle rate is only a 10th. So that tells me that players are not going for this green. It is just a positional tee shot to it with a wedge in hand for their second. And then the other short par 3 or one that's less than 400 yards, definitely not drivable. Par 4 third, 392 yards. But again, only a 10th of an eagle. So no drivable par 4s here, but 2 fairly short ones. One from 400, 450, but you see a slew, 60% of our par 4s at Muirfield are from 450 to 500 in length. And then we do have one extremely long par 4, the par 4 17th, measuring 503 on the scorecard. And then our par 5s, we do have one short par 5, less than 550, but 3 of the 4 measure from 550 to 600. And I believe the short par 5, is 547. So it's right there on the edge of that boundary anyway. So at least early on this week, we're probably going to put most of our focus, at least in terms of par 5s, in this 550 to 600 range. Looking at approach shot distribution, several approach shots between 150 to 175 and 175 to 200. Again, emphasizing the different types of shots that you have to hit around Muirfield. You do have some forced carries, which will give you, some shorter clubs in. You have some holes where you have to lay back and dial in a longer iron. So looks like, what's this, 22 and a half and 22. So about 44 to 45% of our approach shots come from 150 to 200. And they are the ranges that are most in terms of against the average tour event as well. So we'll see, especially tomorrow, if these two ranges really predict who performs well that week, or is it just a byproduct of the course? So we'll see that tomorrow in the Data Dive show. Moving into the historic cut line, again, just emphasizing the difficulty here at Muirfield. It has gotten to as low as -1 once. It's played to even par once. It's been as high as +7. Mostly, though, it has hovered in this +3 to maybe +4 range. Especially recently, the past 4 years have been anywhere between +3 and +4. So very, very difficult. Now, with a very small cut, I could see this being a little bit artificially high. Thinking about the players who might not play well that week. Of course, anybody within 10 shots of the lead is going to make the cut. And generally speaking, except for years like 2016 and 2019, as we'll see throughout the week, that players usually don't run away from the group and from the pack here at Memorial. It lends itself to some very, very exciting tournaments and exciting finishes. But very, very difficult average cut line around +3 to +4. Scoring distribution, yes, quite a few birdies. Again, with the par fives, so about 20% birdies, but 17.5, maybe even a little bit more in bogeys. You see this doubles bar is astronomical compared to most courses. This doubles bar is quite large. So you stack up the scores that are over par, compare them with the scores that are under par. There are more scores that are over par here than under par, again highlighting the difficulty of Muirfield. Driving accuracy, much higher here, even though the fairways are narrower, because players know how difficult it is to play from the rough around Muirfield. So a lot of times they will take even less club than what is necessary to ensure they are in the fairway and to ensure that they are hitting the right side of a particular driving area. Much like Pete Dye in some regards, around Muirfield, sometimes it might be better to be in the right rough than the left fairway. Just as an example, it's definitely an emphasis on being in the right position, especially off the tee here at Muirfield. So players know that. They make sure they club down and find the short grass. There are a few forced carries, so it's not that you can just plod your way along here. There are some holes where you just flat out have to hit driver, but players know how difficult the rough is, so accuracy much higher here. Greens, very difficult to hit here. 61% versus 66 or close to it. The average tour event. These greens are small, and they play smaller than what they actually are, just due to the speed, the firmness. It is just very, very difficult around Muirfield. So greens are not easy to hit. Scrambling is not easy around Jack's Place either. Between the long rough, all of the water that's in play, the players are going to have to be scrambling for their par from sometimes, far away from the hole. Sometimes they're going to have to be scrambling from difficult positions around the green. Scrambling is not easy here at all. Even though the greens are small, you see the 3-putts are almost at tour average, just emphasizing the speed of the greens, the difficulty of the greens. They are generally lightning fast, and that contributes to a half a 3-putt per round on average. Distance, again, knowing that players knowing how difficult the rough is, they generally lay back a little bit, but it's not as much as you would think on a forced layup course like Colonial, like Harbor Town, places of that nature. You see, the driving distance is somewhat close to the average tour event because, as I've mentioned, there are places where you just simply have to hit driver. You cannot lay it back. It's a very, very stern test. And if you are hitting the greens here, you are generally much closer to the hole just due to the small greens. So there's a look at Muirfield and Jack's Place from a scorecard and graphical view. We did see this a little bit with the average scoring, the cut lines, how difficult it is to hit greens and scramble here. But just to really, really emphasize it, let's take a look at these historic conditions just very quickly. You see all last year, difficult, all of 2022. I don't know why Crestview is populating, but all of 2022, difficult, all of 2021, 2020. 2019 was a little different. Patrick Cantlay got to minus 19 in terms of a winning score, but that's very, very rare. Hovland, I believe, the winner last year at minus 8, maybe minus 9, minus 7. So just a very quick look. 7, 13 from Billy Horschel in 2022, 2021, 13. So the players don't run away. Generally speaking, players do not run away here at Muirfield. Of course, we're on bent. Greens are generally firm, but as I was mentioning, most of the time these greens are lightning fast. You might have a round of fast if we have some weather that comes in, or if there's a lot of wind and Tournament organizers and directors don't feel comfortable keeping them lightning fast with some wind. They can't keep their ball. Players can't keep their ball at rest. But 80 to 90% of the green speeds here are lightning, and of course the rough is long. So we'll move back to the strokes gained page view in Fantasy National very quickly. As I mentioned, very, very difficult around Muirfield. You see 4% easy. That's very, very rare to have here. You might have some average rounds, but it's generally difficult. So in the past 2 years, when rounds have been difficult relative to par, our top performers have been Scotty, Rory, Wyndham Clark, Tommy Fleetwood, Xander, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Russell Henley, Colin Morikawa, and Will Zalatoris. Let's clear that. We will take a look at a few metrics here. I'm just going to go through this because we still need to look at some data in Excel and whatnot. So your top strokes gained approach players. In fact, let's just clear the filters. We'll go last 24 rounds, last 3 months, just really emphasize recent form. Your top strokes gained approach players in the last 24 rounds: Scotty, Corey Connors, Siwoo Kim, Akshay Bhatia, Xander, Adam Svensson, Justin Thomas, Shane Lowry, Russell Henley, and Hideki. We'll do a little bit more with this tomorrow, but we do know that we're going to be looking at some bent, and I'm going to go ahead and filter this to lightning. That would be my guess in how this plays this week. It's certainly not incorrect to look at fast and lightning bent, but I am just going to go ahead and go with bent, lightning bent. Maybe not the biggest sample size, but we have the Masters, we have the Memorial, the U.S. Open if it's played on bent. 3M can actually get some lightning bent greens occasionally. So I think there is probably going to be enough sample size this week with lightning bent as opposed to average bent last week. So on lightning bent greens, in the past 2 years, your top putters have been Denny McCarthy, Harris English, JT Poston, Eric Cole, Victor Hovland, Patrick Cantlay, Keegan Bradley, Wyndham Clark, Patrick Rogers, and Brendan Todd. The only other thing we can take a look at with some amount of confidence, let's go ahead and take a look at par 5s from 550 to 600. Again, just a quick reminder that 3 of our 4 par 5s measure 550 to 600. They are the easiest holes on the course. Players are going to have to take advantage of these holes. And not only that, the 4th par 5 is right on the border of that, 547. So you can easily see this hole extended into that 550 to 600 bucket with moving tees and pin and whatnot. So in the past 24 rounds and or 3 months, your top par 5 performers from 550 to 600 yards have been Scotty, Rory, Mac Hughes, Thomas Dietrich, Xander, Billy Horschel, Cam Davis, Taylor Moore, Justin Thomas, and Nick Dunlap. All right, last thing we're going to cover in terms of Fantasy National. Let's go to the tournament history, page view, strokes gained total tab, if you will, and take a look at the players who have played Muirfield Village the best over the past 5 years. Our defending champion is Victor Hovland. A little bit further down here, you see he actually didn't have a whole lot of success around here before winning. Yes, he had made the cut 3 times in a row, but to some pretty disappointing finishes. I mentioned earlier in the show, Patrick Cantlay, 2-time winner here, 2019 and 2021. He has performed very well here. Jordan Spieth, nothing outside the top 20 in the past 5 years. Siwoo Kim has been very good here. Nothing outside the top 20 the past 4 years. Xander, very solid. Nothing outside the top 25, but does not have a top 10. He's just been solid. Scotty, couple of thirds in the top 25. Rory, been very good. Homa, Denny McCarthy, top 5 and a runner-up the past 2 years here at Muirfield. Shane Lowry's been okay. Ricky Fowler's been pretty good. Billy Horschel, despite the fact that he missed the cut last year, he's got a win, a top 10, and a top 15 in the past 5 years here. He has been very good around Muirfield. Morikawa, a withdrawal, a runner-up, a miscut, so quite boom or bust. Maybe some other notables here. I mentioned Hovland is 4 for 4, but 3 of those have been pretty lackluster. Another player that's boom or bust, Matt Fitzpatrick, top 10, third, 2 miscuts. Tagala's 3 for 3. Adam Shank's 3 for 3. So there's the players who have generally played well in the past 5 years around Muirfield. The other end of the spectrum, or the other side of the coin, players who have not played well here. Tom Hoagie has been really bad. 1 for 4. His one made cut was last year. It was a 65th, not anything to necessarily write home about. Peter Malnati, 1 for 4. Cam Davis is 1 for 3. Kennyama 0 for 2. Keegan, a little surprise here because anytime we have bent greens, Keegan generally performs pretty well, but 3 for 5, but pretty lackluster in terms of overall statistical performance. JT Poston, 4 for 5, but again, pretty lackluster in terms of statistical performance. Remember, he likes bent, but he generally likes shorter and easier. Memorial's not short, Memorial's not easy. Or Muirfield is not short and not easy. Batia missed the cut last year, 0 for 1. Ben On, 2 for 4. Patrick Rogers, 2 for 4. Straka, 3 for 4. All these players have been, fairly lackluster at Muirfield Village. So these players have not played well. All right. Good segue. Let's dig into that data just a little bit more. We move to Microsoft Excel and players in the field this week. This is performance at each individual statistic, specifically at Muirfield the past 5 years. You see Will Zalatoris has only played once, but he did finish 5th. Scotty, a third, and I believe a tied for 22nd. So he's averaged a 9th place finish. Spieth has been very solid. Cantley's our strokes gain total leader. So what I'm going to do, because Muirfield is common and consistent year over year on the PGA Tour, I want to find the players who have played Muirfield consistently. So we're going to filter this to the players who have played it at least half of these past 5 years. Let's see what these players are performing well at. So you see Scotty doing pretty much what Scotty does. He's lost on the greens, but his irons have been exceptional here. Driven it well, gotten around the green very well. Jordan Spieth, probably no surprise. It's much more in the short game with his short game prowess. But he's been solid all the way around. Cantley's been spectacular all the way around in his full with his full arsenal at Memorial. Xander, much the same. He has actually lost a little bit on putting, but his ball striking has been exceptional. Siwoo's been really good at all 4 statistical areas as well. So if we sort, let's just take a look at the players who have averaged a top 40 or better and played it 3 of the 5 years or more. This is 14 players. That's plenty enough just to give us an idea of what players are doing well. Off the tee, this is a 1.0. You see the approach, only 1 player negative. This is going to be a pretty high number, 2.5. So already 2.5 times the importance approach to off the tee, at least for the players who have consistently performed well around Muirfield. around the green, you got a lot of good performance as well up here. This is a 1.0, so matching off the tee, what we kind of saw in Fantasy National. And then putting, 1.3. So what I would have expected, you really need to hit your irons very well here. Those with distance probably have a little bit of an advantage, so long as they can keep it somewhat accurate. You see Rory, Scotty, Cantlay, Xander moves it. He doesn't get enough credit for how much he moves it off the tee. Tagala moves it. Max Homa. So there's a look at some strokes gained and a little bit of distance there. We move to fairways, greens, distance, and whatnot. Again, you see most of these players are pretty good with distance. One exception is probably Seabez. And he's not very long just naturally. It hasn't stopped him from being pretty good here, though. I imagine most of his is in the short game. Yeah, look at that putting. So he's just putt extremely well here, despite losing almost 3 shots off the tee. Let's see. Fairways doesn't look like a whole lot because players know how much fairways are important, so they kind of club down. There's not a lot to be gained there. Instead, let's take a look at this good drives gained in greens. So good drives gained, this is a 1.3, but really, if we take away these 3 at the very bottom, that becomes a 1.9. Really, the only one that's bringing this far down is Sahith Theegala. Greens, it's a 2.5. What was this again? 1.9 essentially, if I remove those 3. Yeah, so probably more so in the greens, which is probably fair, especially since these greens are small. If you are hitting the green, you're essentially giving yourself a pretty good opportunity on that hole. But lot to dig into tomorrow. I am quite interested in seeing some distance in these prior leaderboards, see how distance works out. Moving to scoring, my inclination would be that the higher raw numbers are in the birdies gained, but that the more consistent would be bogey avoidance. Doesn't look like the case. Look at this. Majority of our players, in fact, you have to come all the way down to Hideki, who averages a 50th, before you find your first player negative in birdies gained. So quite interesting, but not a whole lot in terms of high raw numbers. This is a 2.4. This is a 2.1, so actually it is still higher than the bogey avoidance. It's interesting. Only one player negative in bogey avoidance. So I still think both are important, but I am starting to become a believer in looking at birdies gained even on difficult courses. That is what really led me to having a successful PGA championship. Even though it didn't play difficult, it allowed me to key in on a seemingly out of form Victor Hovland and a few other players, that they were still able to get birdies when it's difficult, even if they combine that with a few bogeys. Because in DFS, these birdies, it's all about the birdies. Moving into par 3s, 4s, and 5s. Again, just kind of doing this arbitrary cutoff at top 40. Par 3s are a 1.1. Par 4s are a 2.7. I know the par 5s are off the screen, but that's actually fairly large, a 2.1. So the par 5s almost as much as the par 4s. It's very odd to see, but it is, the data doesn't lie for that. Majority of our par 3s fall here. I don't see a lot in terms of an overwhelming range that we would need to focus on. Just kind of the par 3s in general, it looks like. Moving to the par 4s, you see they're still going to be important, even though there are 2 less than what we have been accustomed to the past couple of weeks. Still going to be important. We have 2, 1, 6, and there is supposed to be one that measures 503, but you see, in the past 5 years, it has not played over 500 yards. So it's quite possible that we're just going to be looking at the 450 to 500 if the majority of the par fours are going to fall into that range, 70% or so. Interesting. Let's see. Down to here is a 1.4, 0.8. Yeah. Looks like it's probably the 450 to 5s if we were to separate out a range, this early in the week. But that's what tomorrow and the Data Dive show is for. But you can see the par 4s in general are still going to be important. And the par 5s, look at this. Only one player negative in terms of par 5s at Muirfield, averaging a top 40 finish. Very important. Very, very important. It does look like the 500 to 550 would be probably the more consistent, but the highest number in here is like a 1.9 or a 2, whereas you have a 3.5, you have a 3, 2.5 in here in the 550 to 6. So still thinking it's going to be the 550 to 6 that we want to look at. And then lastly, take a quick look at proximity. To be expected, total procs might not be a thing because these greens are so small. So it doesn't look like too much here. Although, well, it's pretty weak up here. You got a few players negative and right at field average. It does gain for like this portion. It's quite interesting. But the majority of our approach shots fall in these two ranges. And at least in terms of historical performance for the players who traditionally play Muirfield well, look at that. 175 to 200 is something. Minus 7.5, that is slightly, and I mean just slightly, under field average. You have a couple of more poor performances here, but a lot of good correlation right there in terms of players who have consistently played Muirfield well. They've done well with the 175 to 200. So perhaps that's where we want to start when we look at proximity tomorrow, is to look at the 175 to 200. All right, that is it for the show this evening. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, watching, listening, supporting the channel, liking the videos, commenting, and subscribing. Love what I do, taking an in-depth look at sports statistics, trying to help us all win a little bit of money in the process by giving you a statistician and data analyst's view of what he sees. Reminder, tomorrow I'll be posting on social media any patterns that I find regarding previous winners, how they've performed at Muirfield leading into their win, and things of that nature. So be on the lookout for that tomorrow over on social media. But again, hopefully you had a very positive, very successful RBC Canadian. Please put it in the comments if you had the Bobby Mack outright or if you had successful DFS. I would love to be able to shout out members of the community who have success. So for all the wagers you made this past week for the RBC Canadian, for all the DFS contests you played this past week for the RBC Canadian, and until I see you tomorrow night for the Data Dive show, may all your bets be profitable.